Mermaid Ariana. Don't you just love to dive into a good book? Well, I've got one for you. Mermaid Steel. It's a romance novel, but so much more. It's about a mermaid weaver who falls in love with a human blacksmith. And they have to overcome some pretty deep cultural differences to get their two villages back from the brink of war. But here, let me read you a bit. Her heart pounded again, this time with a glimmer of hope. She lowered her head and looked up at him. Can you forgive me? He turned to face her fully. Yes, Shale, I forgive you. She sighed so big her shoulders dropped. Thank you. Were you worried I'd say no and throw you out? I didn't know what to think. The thought of losing you was tearing me apart. She caught her breath when she heard the words that had spilled out. Sten smiled the most charming, bemused smile he had ever seen. Losing me? Now her heart just about jumped out of her chest. Now or never. All or nothing. Even with all of her courage gripped tightly, all she could manage was a quiet but sincere yes. She didn't see when he moved so close, but suddenly his face was right up to hers. He was breathing just as hard as she was. She was pretty sure the pounding vibration she was sensing was his heart matching hers. He leaned in and puckered up, so she did the same. At first contact, she found the mix of soft lips and muscular pressure fascinating, but this was swept away by a sudden flood of giddy joy that completely surprised her. She held his face in her hands, and he wrapped his strong arms around her body, pulling her up against his chest. She let his love wash over her, and she dove in. When at last he broke the kiss, she rubbed her cheek against his in a stroking motion. She was very happy he had shaved again today. He seemed confused. That's how we kiss. Remember the pressure nerves? Oh, right. You're really sensitive there. Very. Which is why you don't like beards. She stroked his bare cheek with her webbed fingers. Yep. She wrapped her arms up under his and around his back, pulled him in tight, and buried her face into his neck. You make me so happy. She thought she felt him stiffen under her hug. Was she moving too fast? Then he squeezed her back. She reveled in the connection, warmed by feeling his heart beating next to hers. She nuzzled his neck and was pleased that his sweat tasted like seawater. She stroked the back of her head with his hand, caressing the fringe edges of her gill flaps. Even though his hands were rough, it was the gentlest thing she could remember. She loosened her hug and looked up into his eyes again. His breathing quickened right with hers, and they fell into a mouth-kissing, cheek-rubbing, head-clutching frenzy. He once pushed his lips too hard and opened her mouth, only to encounter her full row of pointed, razor-sharp teeth. He pulled back in surprise. She shrugged, puckered up her full lips, and gave him a reassuring smooch. He launched back into kissing her, and her excitement overwhelmed her. The smell of his body, the texture of his loose shirt, the taste of his breath, the hair on his head, his strong hands grasping her body, fumbling with her dorsal fin. It was all intoxicating. She was so lost in the moment, she did not notice her body was gyrating, her tail was lashing, and she was starting to rub her breasts against him. He looked down and she saw what she was doing. You're getting pretty excited, he commented with a chuckle. How embarrassing. I'm sorry. My instincts took over. I'm just mortified. Your instincts? Courtship dance, underwater. Everything is always in motion. We don't just embrace, we swim around each other, brush our bodies together. You must think I have no self-control. Hey, abandon to the moment isn't a bad thing. I'm kind of flattered that you trust me with such an intimate ritual. I really did not mean to do that. Would you stop apologizing? You are who you are. I'm still learning all of this. Believe me, I've got habits and instincts that I'll be apologizing for as well. He caressed her cheek and held it in his hand. Besides, when I look into those astonishing eyes of yours, I'll forgive you anything. I'll promise not to take advantage of that. Your trust is so important to me. You've got it. He leaned in and touched his forehead to hers. Hey, it's way past sundown. How are you going to find your way home? I'll use the moon and echoes. She joked to cover her doubts. You're not trying to get rid of me, are you? No, of course not. I've got a lot to do tomorrow, so I need to get to sleep soon. I also didn't know if you could navigate in the dark, or if your family would worry about you. Or does your family know where you are? They will worry if I'm out too late. No, I have not told them about you. I told my brother about you and the metalworking, but frankly, I didn't know what else to say. Have I really been that vague? Shiel, you stir feelings in me that I have not felt in a long, long time. I don't know how safe it would be to go tell your family that you're seeing me romantically, but please do not doubt that I am very fond of you. Fond. Now there's a word to ponder. May I come see you again tomorrow? Not tomorrow. I'm going to be tied up all day. The day after next would be great. Can you make it the day after tomorrow? Yes, of course. He stood up and stepped to the hearth. Can I get you anything before you go? No, thank you. She got up and straightened her Erida. You're right. It's late. I should be going. He intercepted her at the door. He wrapped his big arms around her and drew her up close. I'm really happy you came tonight. The way he smiled at her nearly dissolved her apprehensions. The warm kiss he gave her finally removed her doubt. She grinned up at him. Day after tomorrow. Good night, Shiel. Good night, Stan. She turned at the wharf edge and smiled back to him in his glowing doorway. She waved and thanked Rora he was such a patient man. She'd nearly ruined it. As she leapt off into the Black Sea, she thought she must slow down. Take it easy. Let things flow naturally. Rora would want it that way. Sten was worth the wait. Mermaid Steel. Buy it wherever you buy your books, starting November 6th. Bye for now.